Today's video is going to be about where to start with music theory. Hey, I'm Schanno Johnson, and if you don't know me, I'm a musician, composer, producer, and I make videos about all that fun stuff, music composition, music production, so make sure you hit that subscribe button to see videos like this in the future. Where do you start when you want to learn music theory, but you're not sure what to learn? That's where we're going to go over what to prepare, what to learn, what to make sure you're really good at, what to get really comfortable with, so that then the later concepts that you're learning are super easy. Now, I do want to make a quick note at the beginning of this video. We're going to be talking about more broadly musical analysis and some stuff that you can work on before you get really deep into musical analysis. Now, I am going to link to Adam Neely's video about music theory because I think it's really important to remember some of the problems involved in music theory and especially the history of music theory, because it kind of has been a lot of emphasis on white men from, well, the 1800s, with not much emphasis on modern music. I mean this video as what to learn to analyze music today. A lot of this stuff is irrespective of all of that history, and it can be really useful when learning to analyze, let's say, pop music or jazz music or some other type of music that you might hear on the radio today. So the first thing I like to do when I'm teaching music theory to my students is teach them all of the basics first. Get really good at the fundamentals. It's not a new idea, and it's definitely not new to music or unique to music, but work on those fundamentals because those fundamentals will help you with all of the later stuff that you're learning later on. No matter how complex or complicated the idea is that you're learning, you need to know the fundamentals in order to learn that idea that you're learning that's really complicated. Now, what are these fundamentals? So I would consider that learning all of your major scales, right? All of them, including C sharp and C flat. So be able to list off all the notes in C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, C sharp major as quickly as possible. And be able to list the notes in F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, and C flat as quickly as you can. Now, one way that you can learn this, and what I did that really helped me when I was working on this, was write them out. So either play them on your instrument or write them out on sheet music. This can help a lot because you're really ingraining in yourself what notes are sharp, what notes are natural, what notes are flat in all of these scales. As silly as it is, another thing that helps a lot is as you play them, say the notes out loud, right? So let's say you're playing an A major scale. As you play through that A major scale, say out loud, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Say them each out loud as you play it on your instrument. And then do that with the next scale and the next scale, right? All of this stuff will help you really, really know them so that as soon as you think of that scale, you know all the notes in it. That's what you want to be able to do, especially when you're analyzing music. This can be really useful because if you're analyzing a piece of music and you're slow in remembering what notes are sharp and what notes are flat, and you're having trouble remembering what's a chord that's in the scale and what's a chord that's not in the scale, that's going to put a lot of time and slow you down while you're analyzing music. Another thing you want to be able to do is be able to hear this stuff in a piece of music. Now, you don't necessarily need to be able to hear every single different type of modal interchange chord or every single different type of chord that's not in the scale and how it relates, but get a general idea with your ears of what certain chord progressions sound like. One goal I had when I was working on my fundamentals of knowing the major scales was, could I imagine all of the notes at once? Not just think, okay, so we have E flat, then we go up a major second to F, then we have G, which is up a major second from F, then we have a half step, so that's A flat, then B flat, up a whole step, and then we have up a whole step again, C, up a whole step again to D, and then up a half step to E flat. Rather than having to struggle and do all of that, practice that through a bunch so that when somebody says, what are the notes in E flat major? You can then say E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat right away. You know all the notes. You got them. You can just say them off right away. Or if you're playing an instrument like piano, you can just play them all at once. It's kind of a mash of a whole bunch of notes, but be able to do that and think about those that quickly. It'll help you a lot when you're learning other stuff like Roman numeral analysis. Learn all of your major and minor chords. Be able to know what notes are in an A flat major chord, or an A flat minor chord, or a D minor chord. Be able to think about what those notes are fairly quickly, right? At least be able to read them and identify them when you see them on the page. That will help when you're analyzing music, because if you're analyzing a song that has, like, you're given a lead sheet and you're trying to analyze that song from the lead sheet, you need to be able to figure out what notes are all in those chords so that you can know whether those notes are in that scale. And for this one, I would learn even the enharmonics. So learn a D sharp minor chord or a D flat minor chord, as well as learning E flat minor and C sharp minor. Those are the same notes or same pitches in D sharp and E flat minor, but they're spelled differently. So learn what that difference is, right? D sharp minor chord, you have D sharp, F sharp, A sharp, and an E flat minor chord, you have E flat, G flat, and B flat. Same exact pitches, they'll sound exactly the same, but they're written differently. And for a lot of music, you're dealing with music that's written, and it's really useful to be able to deal with written music because so much music is written, and it can just be a little faster sometimes. You don't have to hear a song, you can be given a lead sheet and read it through. Another thing to practice when you're starting to learn music theory is your music notation reading. So get comfortable reading music notation. I would learn bass clef and treble clef with this because even if you play an instrument that only reads one of them, it can be useful to be able to read the other one depending on what music you're playing. For example, if you're a bass player and you're given a lead sheet that's in treble clef because it has the melody, it might be useful to be able to read treble clef so that you can identify what the melody is and use that in your performance of that song. Same thing with guitar. If you're given a piece of music that has chords and a piano part and a vocal line, sort of like a piano vocal, you'll be able to identify what's going on in the music a little better and play along to that music a little better than if you could only read one treble clef line. Right, you'll be able to follow the bass. If there are any changes in bass notes that you don't see in the chord symbols, for example, for theater music, you'll often see bass parts that are kind of played melodically. And this happens in a lot of music, not just theater music, but being able to identify where those changes are will help you play that song better, right? The more you know about the song, the better you'll be able to perform it. Okay, another thing to get pretty comfortable with when learning music theory at the beginning or before you start is reading rhythms and playing rhythms. A lot of the time, this might not be included in proper musical analysis or proper music theory, but knowing these rhythms is part of music, and you'll use them in some type of music or some type of musical analysis at some point. So learn whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, 32nd notes, maybe 64th notes, maybe if you listen to Yngwie Malmsteen and other shredders, but learn those notes and the subdivisions of those notes. Be able to identify them and sing them from what they look like and be able to hear them and write them down. That's how you really know that you know this idea, because you can identify it, play it back. You could also identify it in writing. Think of it kind of like words. If somebody sings a rhythm for you, like ti-ti-ta, ticka-ticka-ta, then you can say, ah yes, 2 eighth notes, a quarter note, 4 16th notes, and then 1 more quarter note. That was in 4/4. Then you know right away what that rhythm is. You could play it back, you can write it down, you can explain it, all of that stuff. You really know that idea, rather than just being able to sing it back and not being able to write it or not being able to explain what happens in that rhythm. So basically what we're trying to do is get really good at the ingredients, right? All of this stuff is kind of just stuff that's used in music, right? These patterns that's used in music. And that's how I like thinking about it, because it's not necessarily prescribing anything onto the music. You're kind of just trying to say, what's going on here? How can I understand it better? Rather than saying, this is what you need to write a song. Follow these rules and then that's how you music. You don't want to do that. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially with the history of music. It's pretty much been a whole bunch of people breaking the quote-unquote rules, and then that's what music becomes. These are the things that you can work on to get really good at the fundamentals of analyzing music and understanding music, so that then when you try to analyze a piece of music, you have this background, you have these fundamentals that you can then understand it through. Now I have another video on Roman numeral analysis, the basics of that. I'll link that here so that you can watch it. That's another thing that you can work on, and it's something that these things will help you understand. Now, Roman numerals are a super useful thing to be able to use when trying to understand music, because then you can compare songs that aren't in the same key, and you don't necessarily have to transpose them to the same key to compare them. You can just use that analysis technique. Quick note about the major scales. I'm saying major scales, only major scale, because all of the modes of those scales are kind of the same scale. If you know the notes for E major, you also know the notes for the modes that make up E major as well. I like to think of them as one group, so E Ionian or major, F sharp Dorian, G sharp Phrygian, A Lydian, B Mixolydian, C sharp Aeolian or C sharp minor, D sharp Locrian. Those are kind of all one group. The way I think about it is using this weird idea that I learned while I was taking composition classes at Berkeley called pitch class sets. Now, the basic idea is that rather than thinking about something as a scale, you think about it just as a group of notes. You look for groups of notes that are repeated, basically. This idea can be applied to any song, basically, and kind of a melody or a chord or a scale, right? It can be applied to all of these different things. That's why I like it, is those 7 scales are the same pitch class set. The idea is that if you had a jar with all of those notes in it, in order to make those scales, you would pull out of all of the same jar, right? If you had E major scale, the notes of an E major scale in a jar, and you plucked out notes to spell out an F sharp Dorian scale, you'd be plucking the same notes from that same jar. If you went to a different scale, like B flat major, and you were playing a D Phrygian scale, you wouldn't be picking out of the E major jar. That same jar just depends how you organize those notes that changes that scale. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. I hope you learned something about music. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and as always, thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Peace.